Hello, everyone. My name is Gia. I'm a personal trainer, a yoga instructor, and I also have ADHD. And welcome back to the second episode of season 2 of Harness Your ADHD. I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna be super honest with you and say this is the second time I'm recording this because I got about halfway through recording this, and for some reason my file corrupted, and I'm gonna have to start all over again because I can't recover it, and I don't really want to spend any more time trying to do that. So, um, yeah, apologies if this feels a little bit low energy. I'll try my best. So, today's episode is going to be a deep dive into the world of our menstrual cycle, and we'll also learn how it directly affects our ADHD. So, I'm going to split the episode up into 4 parts: the menstrual cycle, or your menses, your follicular phase, your ovulation, and your luteal phase, which technically there's 5 parts actually, because I'm going to be splitting the part about your luteal phase into a second part, which will be a deep dive on PMDD. So, as usual, this will give you an education on how your cycle affects ADHD, as well as some practical advice about how to go on or go about your life for every phase of your cycle, and also information about lifestyle, nutrition, and training modifications, because, of course, that's where my expertise lie. So, just a bit of information about the menstrual cycle first. So, the menstrual cycle is usually 21 to 35 days, most commonly landing around like the 28 to 30 day mark. And parts of our cycle can be disruptive to anyone who menstruates. However, for us ADHDers, this can be an extra challenge. So, you may notice that throughout your cycle, you feel pretty different week to week, sometimes even day to day. And this is due to the fluctuating estrogen and progesterone levels. And this also explains our constant changes in energy, mood, and productivity. Lower estrogen levels lead to a decrease in these neurotransmitters. And if we take these neurotransmitters being dopamine specifically, and if we take into account that ADHDers already have dysregulated levels of dopamine, that drop in estrogen can exacerbate our symptoms, or our ADHD symptoms, quite significantly. So, in super basic terms, high estrogen means better mood, better executive functions, and easier to manage symptoms. Conversely, lower estrogen, lower mood, more disrupted executive functions, and harder to manage ADHD symptoms. So now we have the why. Let's look at the how. So we're going to start it off with days 1 to 7 of our cycle, which is our menses. Also, just like keeping in mind that I'm basing this off a 28-day cycle, the days can be slightly different depending on your own cycle, but all the information is the same. Also, one more thing I want to say is that this is everyone experiences their cycle so differently, right? And so this information isn't a you should be doing this. It's a if you're struggling, here's some things that you can do. Or if you're interested in living a little bit more alongside your own body's natural processes, here's a way you can do it. It doesn't mean that, if you're just training as if nothing has changed over the month, that you're doing something wrong. No, if you're training like that and you're happy to train like that, just keep going. There's no need to change anything. This is just added information for you. So we're going to start obviously with our menstrual cycle. So that lasts anywhere between 2 to 8 days, but it's usually between 6 to 4 or 4 to 6. And the hormones estrogen, and also during our period, the hormones estrogen and progesterone are quite low. And obviously because we're bleeding, we also lose iron and hemoglobin. So that's like a little bit of information about what's happening in our bodies during our cycle or during our menses. Now, everyone's experience of their period is incredibly unique. However, the general consensus is that we can expect uterus and back cramps, headaches, bloating, and general water retention, mood changes, and an increase in fatigue. You may also notice ADHD-wise your symptoms such as your memory, forgetfulness, focus, and emotional dysregulation increase. And so what can we do to support ourselves during our menses? Lifestyle-wise, slowing down is really helpful. Now, obviously the degree to which we can slow down depends on your life, your circumstances, etc. But the more simple that your day can be, the better, especially if you're feeling an increase in fatigue. As usual, prioritizing that 7 to 9 hours of sleep, roughly around 8 for most people, is super helpful during your period. And in terms of exercise, listening to your body is key. So like I said before, if you find that you have no issues training the exact same way you always train during your cycle, just keep doing that. But in theory, biologically, your muscle oxygenation is lower, so your output is technically limited. Like I said, don't let that stop you from working out though. If you feel up to training, weight training can be great to alleviate cramps and water retention. So sticking to strong, stable movements that are simple to execute, so no like weird functional stuff, alongside considering bilateral movements versus unilateral movements. So exercises with both your arms or both your legs versus just one. Jumping movements can also be a bit uncomfortable during our period. So here is your permission from a personal trainer, from a yoga instructor. You do not have to do burpees during your period. Gentle aerobic, like cardio-based exercise in the forms of walks or hikes can be really good for cramps, bloating, water retention, and also just good for your mental health in general. Personally, for me, during the first few days of my cycle, yoga takes a priority movement-wise. Yoga lowers the stress hormone cortisol, which in turn helps reducing prostaglandin synthesis. So prostaglandin is a hormone-like compound that dictates our uterine muscle contractions, which is basically what a cramp is. Physically, asanas that help relax, open, and stretch the muscles around the pelvis, hips, and sacrum can help ease menstrual pain and water retention. Nutrition-wise, if you're in a caloric deficit, just take note that adherence may be a little bit more challenging due to that increase in cravings. It can be a little bit harder, but not impossible, so just keep tabs on your hunger and your cravings. If you feel like it's becoming unmanageable, what you can do is bring calories to maintenance just for those harder days, maybe like the first 1 to 3 days of your period, and bringing those calories up to maintenance in the form of a diet break can be really helpful to stop you from binging. You know, you'd much rather have a slight increase in calories versus like say 1 to 300 increase in calories versus binging on 1,000, 1,500 calories. Outside of dieting, avoiding foods that are known to exacerbate cramps, so avoiding foods like red meat, oils, caffeine, and added sugars, and conversely, foods that are high in omega-3s, such as seafood, chia seeds, flax seeds, soybeans, and walnuts, have a really powerful anti-inflammatory effect that can reduce cramps. So on the topic of cramps, there's a few teas that have been proven to be really good for helping with cramps. So ginger tea has been proven as effective as over-the-counter pain relief medication in reducing inflammation and relieving cramps or pain associated with cramps. And this is due to the phenolic and terpene compounds, which are potent anti-inflammatory antioxidants that suppress that prostaglandin synthesis. Chamomile tea is another potent antispasmodic that helps with painful cramps due to it containing quercetin. It's full of antioxidants, glycine, and flavonoids that ease abdominal pain and cramps and can even help with your mood regulation. Finally, in the realm of your period, making an effort to eat those iron-rich foods to supplement anything that you're losing over these 4 to 7 days of your menses. So iron-rich foods that are anti-inflammatory include spinach, legumes, quinoa, pumpkin seeds, tofu, and seafood. You can also look at an iron supplement. However, I recommend a biglycinate form, so an iron biglycinate, as it's much gentler on the stomach and doesn't cause constipation like most iron supplements do. After your period finishes, we enter the follicular phase. In the early follicular phase, high levels of follicle-stimulating hormone encourages the growth and maturation of follicles. These maturing follicles then produce estrogen, which cause the luteinizing hormone to increase. Now, this combination of high levels of estrogen and luteinizing hormone activate the biochemical process that causes us to ovulate. So basically, in simple terms, estrogen levels start to rise roughly a week after the start of your period and continue to do so just before ovulation, where it peaks. During this time, we also have low levels of progesterone. So estrogen is rising, progesterone stays low. What this looks like in our day-to-day life is honestly the chillest part of our cycle for most people. So we feel the most productive, focused, and energetic. We may notice a boost in like our confidence, even that like our skin looks particularly good. And that's due to the increased estrogen and testosterone alongside or in combination with the low progesterone. Our ADHD symptoms are also at their easiest to manage, which can be a huge relief. As I'm writing this personally, I'm on my day 10 of my cycle and I feel great. I feel productive, energized, my symptoms aren't really bothering me as much. Life is just kind of a bit easier. Lifestyle-wise, this is a great time to just get shit done. So work on projects, schedule hard or difficult or awkward meetings, do all the stuff that you usually just find like really difficult to do. Obviously, this is going to be very different to everybody. Personally, this is when I do my monthly life organization stuff. So, like, work out my meals for the month, schedule any appointments that I forgot, and I also do a decent clean of my space. Movement wise, during your follicular phase, you're at your strongest hormonally. So, use this time to your advantage. Your work capacity and your recoverability is heightened, and so you'll naturally have more energy to expend. High intensity, low volume strength training is really great for this phase. So, think low reps, high weights. And your body is also primed for this, for like lower intensity state cardio. So moderate walks or hikes, just like have fun with it. Now's a really good time to also do more intense forms of yoga. So things like power yoga, vinyasa, hot yoga. And you also have a better ability to learn and try new complex movements. So this is a good time to try to learn a new form of exercise or a sport that you've always wanted to. When it comes to nutrition, this will be the easiest time to stick to your goals, whether it be calories or a macro target or just your healthier habits that you promised. Now is also the time to be as adherent as possible if you are in a deficit. You may even feel like if you've got some room, you can push your deficit a little further temporarily just so that you can compensate for perhaps a diet break later on in your cycle. Again, if you're working with a coach, definitely talk to them about this first. And finally, now is the time to stock your pantry and fridge full of the foods that you want to be eating, because you're going to have that less temptation naturally. So yeah, go do a big grocery shop, clear out your fridge, clear out your pantry, and then fill it with foods that are going to be beneficial and helpful towards your goals. Then we move on to our ovulation phase, where our estrogen levels peak, causing our luteinizing hormone to rise, and then the egg is released from the dominant follicle and sits in your uterus. You'll feel pretty similar to how you felt during your follicular phase. So energy, focus, productivity is still at its highest as long as our confidence levels. We may also feel that we are more social and more friendly, and our libido may also increase. You may feel mild soreness on the side of your body where the ovary is releasing the egg, which is called Mittelschmerz, which is like a fun word to say, right? This pain can last from a few minutes to 1 to 2 days. Just like the follicular phase, workout intensity can stay high, and strength and power-based training will be the most advantageous. It's also a really good time to do any sort of like high intensity interval training if you're into that. Not really my thing, but some people are out there that actually enjoy that. I'm joking, by the way. If you like HIIT, good on you. I wish I could be like that. Fitness classes can also be a really good way to combine that socialization aspect with working out. So group classes, dance classes, pole dancing classes, or even just going on a long hike with your friends or your partner can be a really fun way to just like get the most out of this fun phase. Something to keep in mind, however, is that our connective tissues have increased laxity, and we also have a bit more ligament stiffness and joint instability. So a big focus in our training should be our form during this phase, just to avoid injury, and then also being mindful when we're stretching to not hyperextend past what feels comfortable. Nutrition-wise, we're going to have a very similar experience to our follicular phase. And another thing you can do is have a think about what you can do now to prepare to ride out the more difficult parts of your cycle. So could you maybe batch prep some food and freeze it for when we're coming into our next phase, which is our luteal phase. Finally, let's get into the hell that is the luteal phase. I'm just kidding. Well, only partially kidding. But this tends to be the phase that is the most intense for people who menstruate. And this is because after ovulation, our luteinizing hormone and estrogen levels drop and progesterone starts to increase. And as we know from the start of our episode, when our estrogen levels are at their lowest, our symptoms are at their highest, and we're just generally not having a great time. Our blood pressure, heart rate, and temperature also increases during our luteal phase as well. Physically, we can start to feel more fatigued, having trouble sleeping, or just straight up have insomnia, headaches, changes in appetite, might even struggle with constipation. And most significantly, our emotional state can be quite intense. Mood dysregulation, anxiety and depression is more common than not. And then there's the whole can of worms, that's PMS and PMDD, which I'll talk about soon. But it's personally like a topic I've battled with for like 5 years now, and I've only just recently gotten a hold over it. So, gonna talk about that later on. But as I said before, every part of our ADHD becomes harder to manage. And to make matters worse, it's very likely that our medication doesn't work as well, if at all, and this is due to the depleted estrogen levels negatively impacting the effectiveness of stimulant medication. And I know this happens to me personally, like the week before my period, my medication just like doesn't work anymore. If you struggle in your luteal phase, it's important to tell your loved ones how you're feeling as you're going through this. So ask for help, practice setting clear but kind boundaries, and if possible, avoiding any triggering or difficult situations during this time. Considering holding off on making important decisions and possibly even rescheduling big events if you struggle a lot during this phase. Use this time to practice mindfulness, self-care, and compassion towards yourself. You'll more than likely not be at your most productive, and that's totally okay. We're human beings, not human doings, and if your body is asking for a rest, give it what it needs. This phase doesn't last long, so just surrender to it. Sauna can be helpful to relieve water retention as well, and it's a nice, calm, and relaxing activity that you can do. Now, when it comes to exercise, generally this is the time that we can pull back a little bit. The first 5 days of your luteal phase after you ovulate, you can generally keep doing the same amount of exercise that you were doing before. However, you might find that your energy is a little lower, you might feel a little bit weaker, and so therefore the intensity you might not be able to have the same intensity as you did a week before. And so just be mindful to not force any kind of weight that you may have used last week if it's feeling too heavy that day. What matters most when we do work out is that it feels, whatever we're doing on that day in that moment feels quite hard. It's over time we want to look at, increasing our weight, increasing our reps. A week into your luteal phase, continue to ramp down exercise volume quite a bit and keep those movements super simple. So no intricate functional exercises where you're like balancing on one leg, hands on your head, dumbbell in one hand, like, you know what I'm talking about. We've all seen that. We're also at higher risk of injury during this phase as well. So consider picking machines over free weights and reducing the amount of individual exercises you do in a workout. So focusing on the quality of the movement versus the quantity. So this can be a really great time to prioritize nice, long, relaxing walks in nature or gentle forms of yoga such as yin and restorative. Even hatha-based forms of yoga can be quite good during this time as well. Nutrition-wise, due to our core body temperature rising, we also have a 100 to 300 calorie a day metabolic increase. So this is something to keep in mind if you are dieting. So you may feel more hungry and your cravings can also be at its highest if you do get them. And so because of this, if you are dieting, consider bringing your calories up to maintenance for a diet break around a week before your period is due. And like I said before, it can prevent any uncontrolled binges. So we'd much rather have that small intentional increase in calories versus ignoring what our body's signaling to us and then ending up binging way more than we would have using a controlled increase in the first place. Also, because our body temperature is higher, our requirement for water also increases. So keep hydration a priority, and also considering drinking coconut water or Hydrolite for those electrolytes. And then also potassium-rich foods such as coconut water, but then also sweet potato, avocado, watermelon, spinach, banana, and kiwi fruit are great for combating water retention if you tend to suffer with it. I know personally for me, like a few days before my period, my face like blows up like a balloon, like it goes all circular, which is nothing wrong with that at all, obviously. But it's more just it feels like uncomfortable and I can like feel water sloshing around in my body. So potassium-rich foods are really, really good for that. Now, onto the final part of today's episode. I'm going to go into depth about PMDD because, like I said, this is a topic that's quite like near and dear to my heart. I suffered with oftentimes like debilitating PMDD. So to the point where like I was not very functional the day before my period, especially. And so I completely understand just how like devastating it can be to have that 1 to 2 weeks out of your entire month to feel like the world is just caving in on you. But the good news is that there is stuff that we can do to help alleviate these symptoms as much as possible. I'm not going to say that, we can cure anything because number one, I'm not a doctor. This is not my like realm of expertise, but there are so many things we can do to try to alleviate and just like ease the burden of those symptoms. So unfortunately, many systematic reviews have found that PMDD disproportionately impacts women with ADHD. Moreover, the Journal of Psychiatric Research found that women with ADHD may experience more severe symptoms of hormone-related mood disorders such as PMDD than women without ADHD. Up to 46% of women and people who menstruate that also have ADHD are affected by PMDD. So, now what exactly is PMDD? It stands for premenstrual dysphoric disorder, and it is similar to PMS, and it also happens in the week or two before your period starts as hormone levels begin to fall after we ovulate. So you can think of PMDD as like PMS on steroids and actually going to get into a point where it's affecting your day-to-day life. People who have PMDD can experience intense irritability or anger to the point of it affecting other people, unexplained feelings of sadness, doom and despair, hopelessness, suicidality, self-deprecation or self-loathing thoughts, tension, intense overwhelm, anxiety, or even panic attacks. Also, intense mood swings, crying spells, a lack of interest in day-to-day activities and relationships, especially the ones that you generally enjoy, extreme fatigue and brain fog, intense food cravings or binge eating, and various forms of insomnia. Physical symptoms such as cramps, bloating, breast tenderness, headaches, and joint or muscle pain can also occur when you have PMDD. So you're getting hit on all fronts. You're getting hit on the emotional side, you're getting hit on the physical side. It's a lot. Actually, I'm going to read some firsthand accounts of real people's experience with ADHD and PMDD. It's like a light switch flips and I become a completely different person. It's impacting my relationships with my partners and my kids. I'm not a great wife and I'm not a great mum during these 2 weeks before my period starts. I'm distant and quick to fuse. I'm constantly trying not to spew the self-deprecating internal monologue in my head with my kids and take my internal chaos on my partner. It's just so hard. The next one. Since my first period, I've experienced PMDD up to 2 weeks before my menses. I feel extremely melancholy and dysphoric. I cry every day for hours over nothing and feel suicidal until my period arrived, at which the symptoms would all magically disappear. I could be literally crying my eyes out and feel myself starting to bleed and suddenly completely fine. We get 2 weeks of mental anguish before our periods, 1 week of feeling physically bad on our periods, and 1 week a month to feel normal. PMD sucks. I thought it was normal to feel suicidal for 4 to 5 days leading up to my period. When I feel miserable, I try to tell myself it's just until you start bleeding. Try to ignore it. Treatment-resistant PMDD has affected my entire life, my whole life. I've struggled with physical symptoms and then social stigma. The severity of my symptoms has destroyed my social and work relationships. I'm a chronic bridge burner and I hate myself for it. I stop everything so I can deal with my cycle. I feel like I've hurt so many people just trying to experience a life worth living. I feel defeated, but I have to keep going and hope that I can get ahead of this next wave. 7 to 10 days before my cycle starts, I get irritable and sad. I rage out. I feel like nothing can contain me or calm the storm. I hurt the people around me, the people that I love. It scares my kids and frustrates my husband, and I hate myself. For 1 week a month, I turn into a completely different person. I genuinely don't feel like me. I don't know who this person is. I have outbursts of laughter and then tears and then anger. I feel like I'm combusting. I can't get a hold on anything that I'm feeling. My sensory issues are heightened. I'm irritated by everything. My stimming gets way worse. People look at me funny. At work, I ask to move into a different room or wear headphones constantly. At home, I generally avoid people so I don't lash out and hurt them. It can be quite lonely. Pretty intense. I'll take a nice big deep breath and let it go after reading all of that. It can be quite intense to read, but I think it's to listen to, but I think it's important to acknowledge just how much it affects us. I mean, I feel like mental health, it's definitely better that mental health is being talked about more, a bit more openly and taken a bit more seriously. But yeah, I feel like it's important to hear those stories, and hopefully you've felt a bit of validation for your own experience as well. Personally, my experience was pretty much exactly 7 days out from my bleed. The doom and the despair starts. It's a weird, different type of depression than I've experienced before. I like to call it like the premenstrual doom and despair to try to make myself feel better about it. But it feels like every single thing in my life is wrong. It doesn't matter if nothing's going wrong. It feels like everything is going wrong, that I'm a complete and utter failure, and that things will never get better, and I'm doomed to live a life of being miserable and lonely. And it's really weird as well because I can logically in my head think, yep, this is PMDD. This happens once a month. I'll get my bleed. I'll be fine. These are just thoughts. I've just got to get through them. But it doesn't really change these internal feelings that I feel, the visceral, like heart sinking, gut wrenching, just feeling like the walls are caving in basically. And I wonder if any of you can relate to this as well. I'd love to hear about your experience. On my Instagram page, Gia PT Yoga, I have a story up where you can share your experience with PMDD. I think it's really important that, the more stories that get out there, the better, just for visibility and also for validation reasons. Now, let's talk about what we can do to support ourselves during PMDD. So the number one thing that you can do, and the number one thing that personally helped me over everything, was to regulate my nervous system. The longer that you're in fight or flight, the worse your symptoms will be, period. Genuinely, 80 to 90% of my symptoms disappeared after I regulated my nervous system and got out of the 8+ years of 8+ years straight of being in fight or flight. I'm going to do a whole podcast about the nervous system and ways to regulate it, but here are just some really quick ideas. So you can just Google any of these as I read them out. So breath work, EFT tapping, which sounds weird, but that has honestly been one of the biggest things to help with my nervous system regulation. Cold water immersion, shaking or moving your body, dancing, humming or singing, progressive muscle relaxation, meditation and mindfulness practices, stretching and yoga, slow walks, Epsom salt baths, visualization, coloring or painting, and bilateral stimulation music. So the next best thing we can do is look at what we're consuming, what we're putting into our bodies. A high fiber diet it's great in general, obviously, but it's really, really great when it comes to battling PMDD because it helps manage and regulate our blood sugar and also stave away constipation. And fiber is basically any fruit, any vegetable, or any grain. So if it comes out of the earth, it grows on a tree, grows on a bush, grows in a crop, it's got fiber in it. I also recommend cutting or lowering dramatically your caffeine consumption, especially if you're prone to those anxiety feelings. Supplements can also be really helpful to manage PMDD, as deficiencies can either exacerbate or straight up cause symptoms. Magnesium glycinate, or personally my favorite, magnesium L-threonate, can be great for easing breast soreness, bloating, and cramps. So aim for about 300 to 600 milligrams daily. If you want to get it from your food sources of magnesium include nuts, seeds, and dark leafy green vegetables. B vitamins are also really important. So specifically B6, B12, and folate can really help with irritability, mood regulation, fatigue, insomnia, and any sort of bodily aches or pains, which also magnesium helps as well. I don't know if I said that, but yeah, magnesium helps with like the body aches and pains. A methylated B complex can be an easy way to cover all your B vitamins, as well as adding chickpeas, salmon, and avocado to your diet because they contain all these nutrients. Vitamin E is really good to prioritize because it reduces prostaglandin synthesis, which we learned earlier is responsible for cramping. So avocados, nuts, seeds, especially sunflower seeds, have got a ton of vitamin E in them. Prawns and oils are a really easy way to get enough vitamin E. Calcium supplementation can also reduce overall PMDD symptoms, so aiming for 1,200 milligrams a day in the form of either a supplement or, again, food sources including dark greens like broccoli, bok choy, pak choy, mustard greens, Chinese cabbage, and also sardines. Finally, on the supplement front, Vitex or chaste berry is a herb that is widely regarded as helpful for reducing irritability, mood swings, breast tenderness, swelling, cramps, and food cravings, with an over 50% reduction in symptoms for most women experiencing PMDD with no serious side effects. With any sort of supplementation though, obviously talk to your GP just to see if you've got any like medication or health interactions before starting a new regime. And then finally, DBT and somatic-based forms of therapy such as EMDR have been extremely beneficial for long-term coping with symptoms of PMDD and can also be really good for just like other parts of your life as well. I know personally for me, the generalized talk therapy CBT model didn't really do much for me. But EMDR and DBT, I can't even begin to describe how life-changing those two forms of therapy have been for me. Completely changed my life, changed the way I view my emotions, changed the way I deal with things, changed the way that I interact with my past trauma, like just everything. That's it. Wow, we made it to the end. Surprised myself. So that wraps up another podcast, and I hope you guys are enjoying these kind of like longer based ones. I know this one's about half an hour, but I don't really have like a time limit for as to like how long they go. It's just how I just keep spewing information till there's no more to spew, and then however long that takes, it takes. I hope this information hasn't just been helpful, but also validating as well. Just gonna go on a bit of a rant here, but capitalism brainwashes us to be always on, always productive, always going, always moving forward. And when our bodies naturally and normally ask us for rest, we can embody a lot of feelings of shame and guilt around this. And there can also be a lot of medical gaslighting, especially when it comes to women, and double especially when we throw ADHD into the mix. So I want this to be empowering for you too. So not to see this as something that you're chained or trapped in, something that you can learn about and then learn to flow with. Our bodies are only our enemies when we try to ignore them or try to push past them. If we listen to what our body's asking for and accept what it's telling us to do, things can just be a little bit easier for us. Now, to wrap everything up, I do have a few more spots for ADHD fitness and fat loss coaching, as well as one-on-one yoga spots. So if you are interested in working together in a face-to-face or online capacity, would love to hear from you. You can go to my website, Gia PT Yoga, so GIAPT yoga.com, or DM me at Gia PT Yoga on Instagram. Again, I'd love to hear about your experiences with just the menstrual cycle in general. So please let me know whatever's on your mind when it comes to anything regarding this topic. And as always, be patient to yourself, be kind to your brains, and I'll chat to you guys soon.